Welcome to our podcast, What No Mom Told You, where the rarely spoken truths finally get loud.
I'm Megan Nelson.
And I'm Pauline Walfish. And this is a therapist-led podcast where we talk about the things no one warned you about, the truths that are often kept quiet.
We're naming the messy parts of life: motherhood, fertility, loss, grief, and joy, and everything in between, without judgment.
Because the rarely spoken truths need to be said out loud, and because no one should feel alone.
Welcome to What No Mom Told You.
Hello and welcome. If you are returning, thank you for coming back. And if you're just finding us for the first time, we're glad you're here. I'm Pauline Walfish, here with my loyal co-host, Megan Nelson. Megan, go ahead and introduce us to our guest today.
Hey, today we're so lucky to have Julia Zwerin here today. Julia is an LCSW in her own private practice, and her work focuses on helping women understand and break unhealthy relationship patterns, especially the ones that keep them stuck in cycles of confusion, inconsistency, and emotional overwhelm. And this can be for relationships in dating, partnerships, even friendships. So today she's here to share a perspective that connects relationship patterns, emotional health, and often the unspoken experiences women carry, whether that's in dating, motherhood, or navigating connection and identity shifts throughout the life cycle, different life stages. So Julia, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about really how your work, or why you started doing this work focusing on these relationship patterns, and how it kind of moved towards focusing on women?
Sure. Well, I kind of teach what I had to learn myself and guide people through what I had to learn myself. I was, in my 20s and 40s in New York City dating and really struggling and recognizing that I would kind of go through um these patterns of picking. For me, my pattern was unavailable men and men who, weren't necessarily bad guys or bad to me. The relationships weren't necessarily toxic, but I was often left feeling very kind of consistently abandoned emotionally within the relationship, and choosing men who were kind of, funny, larger than life, but could be sitting right next to me. I could be sitting on their lap and they would still feel like they were, 1,000 miles away. And there was often usually like what I call push and pull, which is they would sometimes pull me in if they started to feel me pull away a little bit. And then as I started to move forward again, they would start to pull away. And so I started to learn more about just my own attachment style, meaning kind of how I learned to relate to people, and recognize that I kind of vacillated between what we call an anxious attachment style, which is, oh, I feel like I'm getting abandoned, and also an avoidant attachment style. Again, that kind of pattern I was in, which was you move close to me, I'll move away, I move away, you move close. So this kind of back and forth. And I wanted to stop doing that. And I think I was in my own therapy for a long time around it before I actually became a clinician. And what I really found was, as much as I loved my therapist, she was so wonderful, we really got to, the bottom of it. Like, this is why you do the things you do. So I had a really clear understanding of why. I just didn't know how to shift it. And so that's when I started, my clinical practice, and then really started to get more into my niche and understanding of this is the kind of work I want to do. I want to be working with people who struggle in this way, is when I, started to think beyond. There were things that I had to change about myself in terms of how I was going out into the world, how I was dating, without getting too far into it, just like dating at a much slower pace, being very clear about what my red flags were, understanding what green flags were, understanding that if I got a certain feeling in my body on a date that was like a little too exciting, like a little, like I call it high. It's like I got a little too high off all of the hormones that were pumping through my body. That was usually a sign that this person is not probably the person for me. And maybe I would give it another shot. But I usually pretty quickly was able to see, I can see where the push and pull is going to happen here. I can already see where the games are getting played. This is familiar, and it means I need to move away from it. And so
But
Yeah.
listening to your body and how, like, you are physically reacting in those
Mhm.
situations.
Absolutely. Yeah, I heard somebody once call it your internal pharmacy, which I loved. It's like, the hormones that are released and understanding the difference between this is risky and I am probably going to get abandoned, and that's what I'm drawn toward, you know, or "Oh, this feels really nice and safe, and I feel the right amount of excitement here that feels healthy for me," and starting to learn the difference between those 2, and tripping along the way. There were definitely some wolf in sheep's clothing who I thought, "Oh, this guy's really different. I'm picking right this time," and then, nope, and that's okay. Yeah.
Why do people get attracted to that risky person that's probably gonna leave you?
Yeah, a lot of it just has to do with how we grew up. And this isn't to say it's your parents' fault, your parents were terrible, anything like that. But usually something happened at some point in those kind of primary years where we really learn about attachment and how to feel safe with people, whether it was with family, with caregiver, with a group of friends. It could have been something that was really traumatic for, somebody with a group of friends where they were ostracized or all of a sudden made the outcast. And those early wounds are, they kind of stick in our nervous system.
Yeah.
And so when we recognize that and we're kind of in a space with somebody who makes us feel that way, there's something that is kind of attractive about it, for lack of a better term. It's like, oh, this is familiar. I know how to do this. And I think there's also often a belief that if I can change this person who feels familiar, then I will be okay, right? I
Uh,
will
there's like a
heal that
feeling,
early attachment mood.
right?
Yes,
It's this fantasy. And we're fed that, not just, through
100%.
some books, movies, TV shows.
Absolutely. Yeah, I often ask clients, just for fun, because I think it's actually fun for anybody to think about it. The two of you can think about it too. Is what were the movies that taught you what love was supposed to look like or what relationship was supposed to look like? And when you think about those relationships, did they really seem healthy? Does that actually seem like something that could happen? Right. So for me, I'm of the generation of like 16 Candles and The
Well,
Breakfast
find me
Club. And
love, right? Yeah.
exactly. And
I was
it's
just
like,
thinking if I have to name movies, I'm gonna really date myself.
yeah, but it's fine. I mean, even, yeah, I have older woman who is recently divorced, and I asked her, and she said An Officer and a Gentleman, which I don't know if anyone remembers that movie, but there was an end that you're like, I want to see what's happening a week, 2 weeks after this because this guy's out of here. I know it, but there's that Hollywood ending that we all kind of are sold, and it's just not really realistic all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and we see it played out in our sessions and our personal lives all of the time. But the logical part of your brain wants to say, like, that doesn't make sense. If something reminds me of something, someone, or a situation in my life that was unpleasant, why wouldn't
Yeah.
I run the other way? Why
Of
am I
course.
drawn to it?
Yeah, yeah. Right, and that is that familiarity piece, right? It must be okay. This is what it's supposed to feel like. And look, if you're somebody who grew up in a home where you were very securely attached, your caregivers really were able to give you everything you needed emotionally, for the most part, within reason. And there were some ruptures, but if there was a rupture or an argument, that there was a repair after that. And so you learned how to do that. Many people that we see, and many of us included, didn't always grow up in like the perfect household. It doesn't really exist. Most of us don't get out completely unscathed, even if we were in great families. And so I think, that is it's not an intellectual experience,
Mhm.
unfortunately. What I really like to work on with women or people in general is that learning to listen to that intuition, really learning, like Pauline, you had mentioned, that feeling in your body, really starting to listen to your gut. We don't call it a gut feeling for nothing, you know? Our gut so often tells us, yes, this is right, or no, this isn't. And if we can start to really listen to our intuition and say, oh, okay, I'm sensing this old familiar feeling, this is what I'm usually drawn to. I'm going to take a step back. I'm really going to check in with myself and see how I feel. I'm going to leave this date. I'm going to kind of go through my list of things. Was I present? Was I myself? Was I what I call pretzeling, right? Am I pretzeling myself into being the person that I think this person wants me to be and I'm not actually showing up authentically? That can often be a sign for people is, oh, I don't feel like I'm really going to be safe here. So I'm going to play into what I think this person wants.
Mhm.
For women, that often ends up in completely abandoning their own needs, their
Mm.
own wants, right? I don't need anything. I'm just the easy girl. I'm laid back. You work late all the time. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Just, hit me up when you're available, right? It's this, they really, and it's why we see, I think, so many young people getting into these, and we all did it as well in our own way, but situationships have become like this kind of thing that people do all the time where there's no actual saying, this is what I need, this is what I want, this is what I expect. And so often it is tied to, because if I do, they'll go away. If I
Right.
actually take up any space here, I will be abandoned. And so really, we're looking at like this younger part of ourselves, the inner child, whatever we want to call it. There's a part of ourselves that feels like it needs protection. And the way we kind of help it to find protection is by doing whatever we can to make sure that person doesn't re-traumatize, re-wound the little person in our psyche that we're taking care of. I hope that's not too clinical, but
Yeah,
yeah.
well, yeah.
Okay, great.
If it feels too clinical, if you're listening, go watch the movie Inside Out from Disney.
That's
We'll just
right.
give Disney a
It'll
little
explain it
plug
all.
right now.
It's a perfect assignment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I see this happening when you were just talking about women turning or people turning themselves and pretzeling, right? And
Yes.
then, I'll become whoever you need me to be in order to make this relationship work. And then I see a lot of times when women have done that and then become moms, all of a sudden it's like,
Yes.
oh no,
Yes.
wait, I'm
Yes.
not willing to do that anymore.
Right.
And yet they don't necessarily know how not to do that anymore.
Exactly. And I love the way you put that. This is something that I personally ran into when I became a mom. And I have a 4-year-old, so it wasn't that long ago. I'm an older mom. It took me a while to get there. And I went through a whole bunch of things that you'll probably talk about with other guests.
We do already. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll continue to. And so for me, like just for example, I had a child soon after the pandemic. I left Brooklyn, New York. I moved upstate. I did it with a lot of people who also moved to the area that I live in. All of a sudden, you have all these women who have become mothers for their first time, who've just come out of something that was pretty traumatic was a collective trauma. And then we all moved to this new area. We're all isolated. We don't have any friends. We don't have community. We have new babies. We feel isolated and we need to get out there. And so we're almost looking at it as if when women go out to date and they're in that space of, uh-oh, I need it now. There's all this pressure. There's this, what many people call, you may have heard scarcity mindset, right? There aren't enough, I'm not going to find it. They're going to, and so the way
Everybody
I start
has
to
their
see it,
tribe already. Yeah.
that's
Is
right.
that
That's
that this
right.
is maybe this is good enough, right?
Exactly.
Or
Well,
as good as I deserve.
yes. And I have equated that to what I call your freshman year of being a parent or your freshman year of mothering is, who those of us who went to college or those of us who just started a new school at some point, you get into the new school and you need to have friends. You need people to do things with. So what does that look like in college? You hang out with people that are in your dorm, your roommate. The only thing you might have in common is we all just started school. Let's see what we have in common. And 4 years later, you're in the quad or you're in the cafeteria and you see one of those people and you think, wow, remember when we hung out and the things we did? Lovely person, but I now have my group. I have my people. I'm about to graduate and these are going to be my friends for a long time. That person no longer is. So I think that we kind of do that as mothers as well. In the beginning, we're just understandably so desperate for connection and to talk about what we've just experienced, what our bodies are going through, and you want to be around people who can support you through that and who can understand you. So you kind of create a circle of friends based on the fact that you're all new moms.
That
What
proximity connection.
Exactly, exactly. And then what kind of I think tends to happen, or what I've seen and also what I've experienced some of my clients kind of going through, is recognizing that maybe some of those women break off into a different group because they do have more in common. They are more connected for whatever reason, or there's a click, or there sometimes is a mom. I have someone who went through this really recently, and it's been really painful for her. There was a mom who's just kind of a mean girl and kind of whipped up this group of women, and there was gossip and there were all sorts of things happening, and it was incredibly painful for her. And this is something that she went through when she was 13 and started a new school when she moved somewhere. So she's really experiencing all of that pain again. And she is somebody that I worked with when she was younger and she was dating. And we got to that place where she was dating in what I call a very healthy way, kind of taking steps and recognizing, what are my patterns? What are the things I need to have in place? 1 date a week for the first few weeks, no more than an hour. We're not drinking, we're having coffee, or we're taking a walk. All the things she needed to do. I'm not suggesting everyone needs to do that, but that she needed to do to be able to kind of keep herself grounded. That all goes out the window. You're not thinking about that when you're kind of hooking up with these new moms, right? Or hooking up with these new parents. And so it was very painful for her to realize, oh my goodness, I was completely drawn to this woman who is unavailable, who I felt judged by, who didn't meet any of my needs, who would say she would text me for an outing, then wouldn't. And all of these old feelings came up for her. And I just thought, this is really interesting. And I experienced it myself, not to that extreme, but definitely, recognizing like, oh, that seems like an interesting woman. I want to be a part of whoever she's hanging out with, and this very kind of young adolescent part of myself was triggered. And I had to look I had to look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
talk about in maternal health this period of time that we call matrescence, right? Which is like the
Yes,
parallel to adolescence, right? It's that
absolutely. Yeah.
identity shift and change and hormones and
Yeah.
so it makes so much sense that like
Yes.
experiences socially as a new mom might trigger that adolescent, like wanting to fit
Absolutely.
in and finding your peer group and
Yeah.
being picked on or bullied
And friend
Yeah.
or
breakup.
left out.
Yeah.
Friend breakups that are
Breakups.
That are
excruciating.
devastating. Yeah.
Devastating for women, yeah, for people in general, but like, yes, and I again, I've seen that happen. I've seen it, there are these big rifts now that can happen on local Facebook groups or
Mm,
WhatsApp chats where there's a whole bunch of moms and someone says something that's off color, or who knows, and then they're kind of ostracized, or they're wondering how to respond to something, or do I respond to this now? Do I respond to it later? Do I want, there's just a lot of self-doubt creeps in.
yeah.
And yeah, yeah,
And then the mommy wars.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This reminded me of my sons are teenage preteen right now, but I
Mhm.
remember when my oldest was 2 and being on the playground in the city, and there was a little rift with a mom who I hadn't met before because my son had the same scooter as her daughter, and her daughter's was stolen. And so she thought maybe we had stolen the scooter, which we had not. But, I was standing with friends and, she came over to yell at me for stealing her scooter, which I said I'd be happy to show you the receipt. But when I went over to talk to her, she said something about, oh, you're standing over there with all of your chickadee friends. And I thought, like, oh, this is so interesting because she is looking at the fact that I have a group of female friends on the playground, and this is her middle school. And
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I could see how you would feel that way. They're actually really nice women. You know, I'm
Yeah.
sorry about your scooter. And
Yeah.
then she came over later and apologized. But it was like for her, that was this
That
very
knee jerk.
triggering moment.
Yes.
That knee
Yeah.
jerk that I was like,
She's so lucky it was you that she said it to.
"Man,
Yeah, that you could recognize that. But yes, absolutely. I think people are, they're triggered consistently. We kind of wonder why, because I know, so many of these women are just so high functioning in every way, in every part of their lives, right? And you get them into a mom situation, and it doesn't matter if they are corporate lawyers, marketing executives, nurses. I mean, most together women in every part of their lives. And the two places that they have struggled with have been earlier in dating, and then, maybe finding partnership, and hopefully it's healthy partnership, and then seeing this, them kind of get rattled by these friend groups and trying to just, find their tribe. And I think we all know that as we do get older, because we're not really privy to all of the different social environments that we were when we were younger, whether it's we're working in an office. So many people aren't working in offices anymore. So we were either meeting friends by working in an office, we were meeting friends in college and grad school, we were meeting friends because we were out at bars more. I think people just,
Coffee shops, yeah.
yeah, whatever, just aren't out as much anymore. They're on their phones more, right? There are all these reasons why we're just not in community as much as we used to be. And so people have to make a concerted effort to actually get out there and meet friends as adults. And it is like dating again. It really is. It's, okay, I know we have enough in common in that we both want to meet friends. So we're here on this coffee date because we met and we thought, okay, why don't we have coffee and see? And so that's the first date. Do we want a second date? Did it feel like we had enough to talk about in our first date that we want a second date? And at what?
We don't talk about dating friends,
That's
right?
right.
Like, even
Yeah.
as you're talking, like, I know what we're here talking about, but my brain is like, wait, she's talking about friends, or she's talking about like partnered
Yeah.
relationships. But
Yeah.
you're just talking about dating for friendship.
Absolutely. Recently, my husband and I were at the park with our son, and we met another couple, started talking to them, had a great conversation. Turns out we have a whole bunch of things in common. They asked if they had just moved here from across the country a few months ago. They asked if we wanted to hang out. We got in the car after this like hour and a half hangout, and my husband said to me, "Oh my gosh, I think I have butterflies." He said, "This is so great. They're so great. I think we could hang out with them." And we were cracking up, just like, we are dating,
Mhm.
whether we're dating separately, and then there's the whole, if you are in partnership and a parent, it's, do you vibe with them? Do I vibe with them? Do we both vibe with them? Do you just vibe with him and I don't vibe with her? Like, there's all these other
Right. Or
things
do
that
we
kind of,
both
yeah,
really like one of the
one
partners
of
and the other
them.
one's okay?
Sometimes,
That's right. That happens too. That's
and
right.
sometimes the kids don't get along. And as a mom, I'm like, I don't care. As
I
long
don't
as I have
care.
a
You're
partner.
going to.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah.
figure it
Or
out.
sometimes the kids do get along and the parents are
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
Yep.
not my people.
Exactly. That's right. That happens too. Absolutely. It's all of it. And so, yes. So that all of these old feelings come up, because I think we're not in a headspace to think this is actually how we need to be proceeding, or it would benefit me. And look, I don't think every single mom goes through this. Some seamlessly move into a community and it's very easy, or they've grown up with a bunch of people who are having children at the same time. This isn't a given. But I do feel that in this kind of day and age, because of like lack of community in general, that we're just not all in the same spaces all the time, just like we are
Right.
right here.
Going back to that proximity, like who
Yes,
is in your dorm, who's in your workplace,
that's right. That's
when
right.
my
Yeah.
oldest was born, I was on the younger end of mom. So a lot of my friends didn't have kids. And so I didn't really know a lot of people who had kids. And I remember like being like, this is a few years ago. I won't date myself. Like, how do I meet other people who have kids my age?
Yeah.
And everybody would say, oh, wait till your kids go to school. Then you'll meet the other parents. You'll
Yes.
meet them on the playground. And I remember waiting for like school to
Yeah.
start. But like, that's a long
It's a
period
long
of
time.
time.
Well, and what happened? Can I ask what happened? Was it helpful? Did you feel like you met your people once school started?
No, no, because I
No.
was a working mom. So like, I would
Okay.
drop off, pick up. Like,
Right.
I was not the mom hanging out on the
Yep.
playgrounds.
Yes.
So, I eventually, like, found people, and then my friends started to have kids, but for a
Yeah.
while, like, we were the
Yeah.
only ones with kids, and
Yep.
it was hard.
Yeah.
And that was
Absolutely.
before dating apps for friends, so
Yes, I know. We haven't even touched on that, but that's a thing now. That
Just learned about this and I brought it up in our group chat at work and I was like, does everyone know about this? And people were like, yeah, I met people on it. Our friends did. I recommended
yeah.
to these people. And I'm like, oh, this works. It makes
Yeah.
me so, I mean, I didn't even date my husband I didn't even meet my husband online. So I'm so beyond dating apps that I don't really understand how they work that well.
Yeah.
But I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's so exciting to me that it's something that moms, new moms, or anyone really
Mhm.
could
Mhm.
use to find friends." I love that.
Yeah, yeah. It is something that I know some of my younger clients, especially ones who had moved to the city kind of right after the pandemic and were looking, they dated people online, friends. And some of them met friends, some of them didn't. One of them created a group so people were meeting once a month and they were pulling other people in. And some of it was based on, different things, cultural identity or religious identity. There were different ways that people were pulling in. But yeah, yeah.
yeah. So really, like, understanding that the relationship patterns that you have lived through, both as a developing child, adolescent, young adult, starting your own romantic relationships, those patterns reappear with motherhood.
I don't wanna say they do, but it's very possible that they can. I
They
don't think it's an
can.
across the board, but I think I wish I had known that. I wish I had kind of been prepared for your dating life isn't over. You're gonna do it again.
Gosh,
And
I bet you there's a whole bunch of people that are listening that are like, "No, I don't ever
please,
wanna do
no.
that
Do that
again."
again. Of course, and I get it. And, I think it can bring up painful things. Most people who are kind of going through this process, I'm sure there are single mothers and single mothers by choice. I'm not suggesting that they're not, but that in itself, like there's a whole website called Single Mothers by Choice, and those women get together and they create partnership. And so, is definitely, I think if I had kind of been more prepared for friendship always seemed like a pretty easy thing for me personally. It was dating that was more challenging. Sure, I had my friendship breakups and heartbreaks along the way. I think most of us have experienced at least one of those, if not more, or feelings of being left out or why wasn't I invited to that? We've all kind of been through that. When it comes to going through that as a mother, I was not as prepared for the feelings that were going to come up. Also, because there's so much else that's going on. So when you're single, even if you're really busy with work, you can still find the space. You're focusing on yourself. You have all this space to really just focus on what am I experiencing? Why am I experiencing it? Maybe you're in therapy. Maybe you're working with a coach. You're looking at this stuff and you have the space to really let it kind of marinate and you can pick it apart and get clarity. Whereas when you're a parent, whether you're a new mom or, you're even a few years into it, you're thinking about your kid a lot of the time, and how you're going to get everything done. And a lot of times you're sleep deprived and maybe you're trying to have another child. There's a lot that can be going on and it's harder to kind of, I think, and in my experience, it felt harder to kind of stay grounded in all of this stuff that I know. I mean, I'm a psychotherapist. I talk about this stuff all day long, but still, really, I found myself kind of coming home from whether it was like, a holiday gathering with mothers or, there was this monthly thing that's a bar holds up here, a wine bar where they do a a mom's night out. And I went a few times and like the music was super loud. I don't do well with that. There was a lot of like very kind of understandably shallow, just like kind of surface conversation because it's a loud space. What are people really going to be talking about? And I just don't do well in those environments. And I would come home and kind of plop on the couch and think, oh, I just need like a weighted blanket and some tea. And I need to recover from that because that felt like a lot. And I finally just said to my husband, I came home one time and I'm like, what am I doing to myself? Why am I going to this thing? But I realized that that younger part of me was like FOMO, and people, this is where people are meeting and getting to know each other. And like, I even realized it was like where women were kind of showing off their style. They didn't have their hair in a bun and like, sweats and Birks at the park. They were like, "Oh, this is my night to go out. I'm doing my hair, I'm putting on some makeup, I'm wearing clothes. I'm letting people kind of know who I am in a fuller way." And I appreciated that and I wanted to be a part of it, but it was too much for me. It was like stimulation overload. Yeah. And so even coming home from that and feeling like I failed, I can't do that like all the other moms can.
I appreciate you saying that because I am a person that's pretty friendly and I've been lucky enough to
Yes, yes, she is.
find a mom tribe. And whenever I go to school events, I am the girl standing in the corner. And I'm fine. Like, I'm not that uncomfortable, but it's not my place. I don't feel like it's my place to make friends. And when I do know some people, I'll talk to them, of course. But I'm just sort of like, and I'm realizing you saying this, it's like, oh, yeah, it's very overstimulating. There's a
Yeah.
million kids running around. People are talking in very like simple conversations. What do you
Yeah.
do? Who are your kids? These kind of things, which I find a little boring. And so it's like,
We're therapists.
yeah, I'm like, okay, and so that makes a lot of sense to me. It's like why I
Yeah.
can show up in other places and feel connected, but at those kind of events, I'm like, ugh.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I want it, my dates, I want them to be about an hour long, maybe hour 15. I want it to be over coffee or tea or a walk. And I want to really get to know someone in a real way. I want to have deeper conversations. I also want to be careful because my pattern, and I see this a lot in my clients as well and the people who come to work with me. The pattern is often, well, let's enmesh quickly because I don't do well with the in between of like, are we dating? Are we not dating? Like, what's going on? So, I often say that my clients will go from like, they want to go from first date to like Netflix and chill or whatever the equivalent. I don't know if there's a new equivalent of that, but like, they just want to get straight to the like, we're in pajamas hanging out. They don't want that middle part because it's so uncomfortable for them to sit through. And so I see that as well when like kind of getting into these mom relationships. It's like, okay, don't enmesh too quickly. You don't have to be best friends overnight. You don't have to share your, kind of just like vomit of your entire life. Like, here's all my trauma. Here's all the things. Here's how I met my husband. Here's, it's just like keep it lighter in the beginning, even if it's like a one-on-one and it's in a calm environment. It's just like, let me kind of get to know who you are and then get to know you on a deeper level as we move into this. And I think relationally, that is kind of how healthier and stronger dynamics evolve in terms of friendship. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna ask this about friendship, but I think it probably can relate to relationships also, right? So like how do you help people to sort of tease out like, I don't think this relationship is the right one, and how do I get myself out of it? And is
Mhm.
there something wrong with me that I keep like starting to date the wrong one?
Of course. Yeah, it's a great question. So when it comes to dating, again, it's so often that thing that is uncomfortably comfortable. This is familiar. I want to change them. If I can change them, it means that I'm special. It means that I'm lovable. It means that they actually care and then I'll be okay. And needing it from a person who is usually unavailable in the way you need them to be available. And that absolutely translates to friendships as well. Somebody said it really well to me. She said, I remember she was somebody who went to a school where there were sororities. And she said, I remember rushing sororities and recognizing there was one that was kind of down to earth and felt like I belonged. But then there was the one that all the pretty popular girls belonged to. And even though I knew that wasn't the one for me, that's the one I tried the hardest to get into because I wanted them to accept me. And, think what you will about sororities or whatever, but it completely made sense to me. And she said, I feel like I'm doing that with the moms. She had moved to kind of a upscale neighborhood. And she said there was a group of moms who were like just kind of what she called queen bees. And she wanted a part of that, but she knew enough to know I know I'm not going to be comfortable there. I know I'm not going to be able to show up fully as myself. I know I'm going to be compromising what I really want, but I want to be a part of that. And so that's what we were working on is like, okay, well, let's talk to the part of you that wants to be a part of that and, help her to kind of be okay not being a part of that and then starting to find the women who are going to be um healthy in terms of relationship for you and it can take time just like it can when you're dating. It doesn't mean it's going to happen immediately. Yeah. I
And I
mean,
can
I'm
imagine it can go the other way too, right? That like I think that sorority with all the pretty people would be really good for me, and I don't feel like I belong, so I'm going to choose the boring, safe sorority.
That's a great point. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It can definitely go that way. I might settle, because this does feel safer. So I might settle. So it can go either way. And in dating as well, just this feels safe and comfortable, this is Mr. Good enough, Mrs. Good enough, whatever it is, and I'm just gonna do it and not listen to the parts of me that are saying this isn't a great idea because I feel I feel safe enough and I don't want to be out there anymore, so I'm just
Yeah.
gonna do this. Sure. Yeah, yeah. Getting clarity on what it is you really want and also just how you wanna feel. A lot of the work I do, I think I mentioned that I do this coaching as well called Calling in the One, and in Calling in the One, I know it's a corny title, but it's a really it's a really great kind of process to go through. And it's one that I went through myself before I met my husband. I really credit it with, like, actually manifesting my
Julia,
husband.
can you
Yeah.
tell them a little bit about what Calling in the One is?
Sure. Calling in the One is a program that you can do on your own. It's a book, or you can do it with a coach, and the coach works with you kind of through the book, but we get a little deeper. And it's really looking at the patterns, why you've chosen, really helping you to understand why do you continue to choose these people, really looking at yourself as the source of where you are. So, rather than all men are this or all men are that or this always happens to me, it's like you really helping people to recognize that, you have a lot of evidence, but and I can understand why you would feel that way, but like, let's try on this other perspective. Who have you been calling in? And how do we shift that? How do we help you look for what it is that you really want? And some of that practice before you kind of go out into the world and start doing that is, what do I actually want to feel like? Like envisioning, what does it feel like when I walk into the home and my husband or my partner is there cooking dinner for us and I feel secure? And what does my body feel like? And so you're almost training yourself to feel and think about all the ways that you want this to look. He sweeps me off my feet. And it's really like, what do you want it to look like if we break out of the fantasy and, we look at realistically, what do I want partnership to look like? What are my must-haves? What are my non-negotiables? What are my would be nice if, so I can put some fantasy in there. It doesn't have to be, but it would be nice if, and really getting clear so that when you meet somebody, you can and you're getting to know them, you can think about like intellectually, it sounds like this person, for example, doesn't want to stay in this geographic area. And it's very important that I stay in this geographic area, rather than like, well, it's okay. We'll figure it out and maybe we'll fall in love and then he'll want to stay and he won't leave. And I'm going to ignore the things he's told me, just really being honest and listening to what people say to you because they will usually tell you exactly who they are.
Pretty early.
Pretty early. Yep. Yep. Yeah. They will tell you. They will let you know. Oftentimes they will let you know what they're available for through, if they're not saying it, through their actions. And I want to say this too, because this is something that, I'm sure you have both run into with your clients, that I run into all the time with clients and with friends who are still dating or out there again dating, is this fear of putting, whether you're dating through an app or you're getting set up or whatever it is, this fear of saying exactly what you are looking for. This fear of putting on your profile, I am looking for a long-term committed relationship. I want to have children, putting it out there because, they often say, but, I might scare someone off. What are you
Right?
no,
And that was
yes.
not the person that
You
was meant to come to you anyway.
exactly. That's right. You want somebody who wants the things that you want. You're not gonna be scaring anybody off who wants those same things. And I can tell you, I was just shy of 42 when I met my husband, and I had on my profile in New York City, I want to get married and I want to have children. And at 41, saying you want to have children, it was really scary because I was like, they're all going to think about me and be like, she might not be able to have children. You know, what's that going to look like with her? And it just, but I put it out there because it's what I wanted. And I found the person and who wanted to get married and who wanted to have children. And we did have to go through IVF. We went through a lot to have a child, but we did. It, I wasn't tricking him. He knew exactly what he was getting into. We fell in love and it's been a wonderful relationship, but I was very out there with what I wanted and I get it. Like I remember actually putting my age and what I wanted and posting it and, my stomach falling out from underneath me. But people reached out to me. They did. And it was okay. And those were the people who were actually available for what I wanted. And boy, did I just don't waste time on people who aren't there for what you are there for. You're not going to scare anybody off. Yeah.
And getting in touch with what it is that you actually want.
Yes, and being honest about that and kind of being able, whether it's with your therapist or with a friend or actually being able to name it and doing that, kind of practicing it, because it can be scary to say, this is really what I want and I'm ready for this. And then, I mean, this is a whole other podcast, but like, what happens when you actually get what you want?
Yeah. I always tell
Yeah.
my clients, I'm like, that's the magic of the vision board is to clarify
Yes,
what you want so you can see it when it starts presenting itself, right?
100%. And,
You
and
know,
seeing how powerful manifestation is. I mean, it is, you say what you want. Be careful when you say what you want because, we are powerful people. And if we put it out there, it usually at some point will come to us. Yeah.
through being able to recognize what you want and when
That's
the
right.
opportunities arise. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And taking the actions to get there. And sometimes that first action is just, okay, I'm saying it. This is what I want. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to get there, but I'm ready to be honest about it and to, not continue down the road of this pattern and move away from someone when they are looking like they're not the person and not respecting my boundaries. And, the first time you do that, I remember the first time I did that when I was dating, we'll say, I call it intentional dating. I'm out there dating with intention. I know what I want. I know how I want to feel. And the first time I did that and told somebody after a few dates, I don't think this is going to work for whatever reason. And he was attractive and available in a lot of ways, but I just knew that I felt it. And to say, this has been lovely, you're great, but no, it was so empowering. It was like, I think it was probably one of the first times I'd ever done that to somebody who, was kind of sparking that. Yeah,
Otherwise seemed like, except for the gut check,
exactly.
Good on,
seemed like
Yeah,
a good,
yeah.
yeah. But probably would have taken me on a wild ride eventually, and to be able to step out of that and take myself out of harm's way and take care of myself that way, just felt it was really empowering. And once you do that, it's a lot easier it's momentum. Yeah.
all right. Well, it has been lovely having you here today.
Thank you so
For
much.
people listening, let's just like name it, right? The thing that no one told you,
Mhm.
right?
Is, like I said before, is that I would continue to date once I became a mom, and that the relational issues that I had thought I had kind of nipped when I met my partner and I thought I finally did it, they didn't go away. They were just kind of lying dormant. I had enough wherewithal to keep them in check when I was dating. But again, you become a mom and there's so much going on and it's like a whack-a-mole game. It kind of like just popped up in this other place. And I was like, oh, I didn't know all of those, insecurities were still kind of lurking somewhere in my
Yeah.
in my internal organs. Yeah.
And your
Yeah. So
dating
just to be
days are
aware.
not over.
They're not over.
You're
They're
gonna be
not over,
dating
and
for the
that's
rest of your
okay.
life,
That's right. That's right. But
and it is okay.
relationship doesn't end with partnership, with a romantic partnership. Relational experiences continue, and it's okay to, to kind of trip and skin your knee again, and then
Yeah.
have to look at this stuff again. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Julia, for people who are licensed in New York State, is that right? Are you accept?
Licensed in New York State and in Florida. I can work with anyone anywhere in the world.
And what is your
Yeah.
website? We'll provide a link for it, but if you'd like to.
Okay, it is a long one.
Okay.
It's Julia Zwerin Therapy.com. That was a mistake. And I have an Instagram handle, which is at the dating therapist.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll have you on. Sorry.
Yeah,
Maybe
we'll
we'll
put
have you on.
all of that in the
Great.
all of that in the comments.
Wonderful.
And maybe we'll have you back to talk about dating after divorce if you would like to.
Oh, I would love to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
sure.
All right. Thank you so much. It's so nice.
Thank
to
you
see
both
It was
so
great
much.
having
I
you.
loved it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for spending this time with us. If you found yourself nodding along or saying, same, that's kind of the point.
We hope you leave today feeling a little less alone. This is what no mom told you. And yeah, there's more where that came from.